The meeting. Got it. Done. Let's see what happened here. We might. Oh yeah. It worked. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome. We are working. We're alive, my friend. We're alive. Let me double check Facebook here. See if it's on here because last time it didn't go straight to Facebook. But we're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it work. So on YouTube, let me double check. YouTube. Wait a minute. You get that, when you go live, you get that little pause, everybody trying
A
to get
little
themselves
pause.
together to
Yeah.
see. All right, we're live.
We're
Hello,
live.
Nikki.
Hello, Asher.
Oh my God. Well, everyone that's watching right now, another day after the 5 p.m. Theme around fear. Like today's around failure. Actually, today's around failure. So yesterday we talked about first time experiences. We had an awesome guest on the show, Shalise, and today we're gonna talk about failures. And Nikki is gonna entertain it with some experiences of failure. I'm gonna introduce some of my experiences as well, so we kind of make the show go on. So Nikki, if you don't mind sharing with our listeners or watchers, so forth and so on, a little bit about yourself. Let's start there.
Sure. Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on. I enjoy talking about these types of topics.
Mm.
I am a personal trainer for your mind. And what that is, is the mental fitness. We all,
Personal trainer for the mind. You a mind expert. Okay, let's go.
accept that we do physical fitness for the body to build our muscles and get toned. And the brain is like a muscle. So when we can give it a nice workout, we can strengthen it, we can be more resilient. So that's
Mhm.
what I help my clients to do. And
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, we're gonna start off with the mind expert, the being a physical expert of the mind. So, so how did that journey started for you? Let me start there. How did that journey started for you? Being a
Yeah.
person that
So
work people mind out.
the
The
journey
mental gym.
The mental gym, yes. The journey started with me wanting to get out of my own mind from being early teen, just struggling with the negative thoughts and low self-esteem and not feeling good enough and all of that. And was always into self-help. I found that very comforting to read books and learn how, like, you're not alone. Like, other people think these things about themselves too. So I was always
Mm.
fascinated by the mind and how do you change your mind? Especially when what's in there, renting space, is not very good. So it's been a life journey for me. And there were things in my life that, for example, dreams. We all have a dream, right? That a passion, something we want to go after, and we get the courage to do it, and then we do it, and then we give up. And that was something that I did. And I'll talk about it when we get to failures. But I basically went from wanting to be an actress and pursuing that for a little while and then giving
Mm.
up and then settling into becoming an elementary school teacher, which was other people's dreams, not my own. But being the good girl and the rule follower, and you tell me to do something and I do it, I did that for 15 years unhappily before getting the courage to begin again at a midlife crisis at the age of 40 and
Mm.
pivoting into coaching. So I learned that you've got to change what's on the inside first,
Mm.
the 6 inches between your ears, in order to get different results in life. And that's how I got into doing this today. I did it for myself. I made those pivots from actress to teacher to entrepreneur. And the only obstacle that stands in our way is ourselves and what we think is possible and not possible for ourselves.
You mentioned earlier about, well, thank you for sharing that, by the way. You mentioned earlier about like the self-help, the self-improvement journey. And I'm curious about who was some of your heroes in books or in person, or your sheroes, you want to, sheroes or heroes. Who were some of those people for you that kind of really got you into that space?
Well, the very first self-help book I read was Gary Zukav's Seed of the Soul.
Mm.
I was 16 years old.
Is it Zukov? Gary Zukov?
Gary Zukov, yeah, Seed of the Soul, and
I
it
read that book too. Yeah,
resonated.
yeah, yeah. I
You
know.
read it
Yeah,
too?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It resonated so much with me. And the next one that I read was by Iyanla Van Zant. One day my soul just opened up. And that was another good one that included journaling.
Mhm.
So it was really powerful.
Okay. And that took you on
Mhm.
your journey where you are right now.
That
I
started
see.
the journey. And then I got into Brene Brown and uh, Dr. Joe Dispenza, so
Uh-huh.
many different great authors.
Mm. Well, Zuko, Oprah was the one I saw was sharing that guy. I think I saw she was the one that sharing him on her show, and he was talking about his book, and I'm like, let me go check that out. It was
Yes,
actually a
that's
really
how
good
I
book.
found him.
That's how
I
you
was
found him too?
and that's how I found Iyanla Van Zant on the Oprah show when she
Uh-huh.
started the Super Soul series.
Yeah.
And I
It's
used to
it's
record that show back when we had, you know, to record because if you were out, you
mm-hmm.
couldn't watch TV when it was on. And
Mm-hmm.
I would record the episodes, come home, and I'd watch them and just take it all in.
It's interesting how Oprah like bring her own stuff to life through just authors and book people that she interviews, so forth and so on. It's interesting how she started that journey. So let's jump into failures. If you had to share any one of those failures that happens in your life that you learn a lot from that really transform you, that you're like, wow, that thing right there, I wouldn't give it back if somebody asked to take it back. I wouldn't give it. If somebody breaking my house and trying to steal it, I would protect it because it was so valuable to you. What would that failure be?
Okay. So I like the way you phrase that.
Mm.
Yeah. What would I take back? So it's going to be the same answer. It's going to be that decision that I made to move back home to New Jersey and
Mhm.
just let go of the acting dream.
Ah.
At the time, it was a failure because it was something that I wanted. Right. So I
Mm-hmm.
think to me, failing is feedback. There is no
Mm-hmm.
failure, there's only feedback. When it becomes failure for me, and I'm speaking for myself, is
Mm-hmm.
when you're getting the feedback and you just stop on something that you still want. So it was a
Mm.
failure at the time because I still wanted it, but I didn't believe I could achieve it. So I gave up and was unhappy. So
Mm.
that was a failure. It took me about 15 years to learn the lesson because I didn't get it right away.
No, it's a long time to really connect the dots. Like, oh, that and that, right? Ah, mm, okay.
Yes,
15
yes,
years.
yes. And what I did was I basically played a victim role. I
Hmm.
came up with reasons and excuses for why it was impossible for me. I
Hmm.
remember part of my decision was based on a conversation that I had on the set of City of Angels. I was an extra on this
Hmm.
show.
Hmm.
And all the extras, we were sitting in a circle in these chairs and we were just talking. And this one fellow actor said to me, if acting is not the air that you breathe, then go home because there's people coming in by the busloads that want it so bad. So if that's not you, you don't need to
Hmm.
be here. And I took his words very literally, being a
Hmm.
literal listener. And I said, it's not the air that I breathe. I don't think I want it enough. And I talked myself out of it
Hmm.
and made the decision. So how I was a victim was that blaming other people, giving reasons and excuses. And then even when I settled into teaching, it's like, oh, I'm here because, people pushed it on me. And the lesson that I learned 15 years later is that you've got to take personal responsibility 100% because that's the only way you can change your life. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of circumstance.
Hmm. So how long? So it take you 15 years to stop blaming externally, or how many years before you start looking like, okay, it's me, it was my decision, even though it was somebody else's advice.
It
Um,
was so 15 years is how long I taught. And I started about 13 years into my teaching career is when I was complaining one day and I ran into a coworker at a coffee shop in the parking lot. And he said to me, Nikki, instead of complaining, why don't you just bloom where you're planted?
hmm.
And I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it was important. So I just kind of put it in the back of my mind. And then months later, I met this guy who I thought was the one, and
Hmm.
he was like perfect for me.
Hmm.
And it turned out he wasn't. He was just a reason and a very short season, but an important season in my life because he
Yeah.
said to me, if there's something that you want to do, then do it. If you want to speak, you speak in your living room. You don't wait for opportunities to come your way, you pave the way. And
Mm.
that's when that bloom where you're planted came back up to my consciousness. And I thought, mindful matters. That's when mindful matters was born. And that
Mm.
was 13 years into the teaching career. So it was a mindfulness program to help kids manage their emotions, turn around those negative thoughts into positive ones, and to really know their worth and
Mm.
be happy with who they are. So that's how that started. And then eventually I ended up, it took a turn and I started focusing on adults, learned about coaching. And then
Mm.
15th year was when I left. So there was 2 years when I was starting to take personal responsibility, but it was the very last couple of days of school in
Mhm.
June of 2019. And I had taken a couple of sick days to go to a business retreat in Vancouver. And
Mm.
it was an amazing 4 days. I said, I'm finally with my people, no more square peg, round hole. Like, I belong here. These are my people.
Mhm.
And I'm on the plane to come back home to New Jersey. And I get in my seat, I'm in the middle seat on
Mm.
the airplane. And I look out the window and I see us, taking off and the beautiful Vancouver getting smaller and smaller. And it just hit me that I had played it so small all these years because I lived at the mercy of circumstance, people, things they said. I didn't stop to question what was true and what are some other options. And Asher, I literally lost it.
Mm.
I cried like a baby, and I was stuck in between these two very patient passengers.
Mm.
The one woman looked out the window and she put her headphones in, and the other one put her nose in a book, but she kept passing me tissues. It was so nice. And I cried for an hour and a half. I literally started saying the Ho'oponopono prayer in my mind. I was like, I love you. Thank you. Please forgive me. I just kept repeating it over and over again just to calm myself down. But that was the moment I took personal responsibility for everything that I had in my life and for
Mhm.
the things I didn't have
Mm.
because I was in the way.
I'm wondering how those two people felt at your elbows and you were in the middle just crying. Like I can picture myself sitting in the seat, like, what should I do? I don't even know what to do. What should I do to help you out right
I know. It was
now?
like an hour and a half. I couldn't stop myself. And then
Wow.
finally, the seatbelt light went off, and I got up, went to the bathroom, put myself together, and then I journaled the rest of the way home. I just started writing out lessons that I learned, what I could take with me moving forward. But the biggest one was you've got to question everything,
Mm.
especially the things that you tell yourself. Telling myself that I didn't have what it took to make it out here in California and that I had no other choice and teaching was the responsible, safe thing to do. Who says? Right? I never
Mm.
stopped to question. I just thought that there was no other option. So another learning was that there's always a door. Even if you don't see a door, there's
That
more
got
doors.
that gotta feel liberating. I'm just thinking about it. Because I remember I had a crying moment myself. Is when I looked up the symptoms of dyslexia and I realized how that played a role in my life. I was like, oh, this is why school was so hard for me. This is why learning was so hard for me because the way I was learning wasn't the kind of the way that I actually learned. And when I saw that, I sat on my bed for like 30 minutes. I was crying. I never cried. I can remember the last time I cried before that moment. And it was so much tears, but I felt a sense of relief and I felt liberated because now I realized, oh my God, this is the enemy. I know what it is. I can fight back. And from there, mm, empowerment happened. So I can just imagine that feeling, even though you were sitting down between two folks crying, but there had to be a feeling of liberation and relief. Was that for you?
Yes, it was. Not in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, but when it finally stopped and I got it all out and I journaled
Mm-hmm.
it all, there was this feeling of relief because it's like now I'm in a position to do something about this. You really can't do much when you're in blame.
Mm-mm. It's like that restricted force instead of the driving force for your life, the restricting force is just holding you back. So
Yes.
totally.
Right.
Yeah.
It puts you in the driver's seat. So you feel more in control. You're behind the wheel. So that's what taking personal responsibility is like. During like while you're actually doing it, it's hard. I say that if you know the Liz Gilbert Eat Pray Love,
The
the,
movie
the
or the
movie
book?
and the book,
The
both.
book. Okay.
But she explains her like moment where she's on the bathroom floor and she's unraveling emotionally and she started taking responsibility for everything. I had that moment. I wish it was on my bathroom floor instead of in the middle seat on an airplane.
Oh, the universe gonna make sure you don't forget that one. Like, hold
That's
on.
right.
This is a story you're gonna get to tell Nikki for a very long time. And
Mhm.
people gonna understand, like, wow. Because I remember one time I saw this one lady at the airport. I guess I was coming back. I forget where I was flying from, and I think the flight got like delayed, whatever. And she was like, "I'm on my way to this job. If I don't get this job, I'm not gonna blah 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 this whatever." And she was just losing her stuff, like having a mental breakdown. I was like, I didn't even know what to do, so I trying to calm her down, help her out, whatever, trying to direct her a little bit. But I can only see when somebody break down in public what they feel like, what happens to them after that fact. But once they overcome that piece, a lot of empowerment, a lot of
Mhm.
empowerment.
A lot of empowerment.
Any other major failures in your life you want to share?
Uh,
Let's take
well,
us back down memory lane a little bit in your
yeah.
life.
Well, I guess I can consider it a failure, and it's for the same reasons, but
Hmm.
never having gotten married and having kids.
Ah.
That was something that hasn't happened so far. Um,
Hmm.
and I would say that it was a same thing, and people will say to me, I don't understand why you never got married or, whatever. And I just point here because
Hmm.
it's the same thing. It's the failure was failing to question what
Hmm.
I thought and what I told myself. Thoughts like I'm not marriage material. Who
Mm.
would want to be with me? I'm not good enough. All those beliefs, which are really just lies.
Mm.
So I failed to question and I failed to lean into other options for what else might be true.
Your failure that you just mentioned right now is a big one of mine. I wanted to share today too. And
Really?
it's a relationship. I think I'm one of like I feel like I'm the one of the biggest failure when it comes to relationship myself as personally. And I felt like I failed to create like a home base. Like a home base. And I've been in the military. I've been just I gave everything I have to the job, everything I have to the job, and then like, okay, so no, where's the family, Asher? And it's just been me most of the time. And I feel like I don't have a home base. Like after I retire, I'm like, okay, what now, Asher? Where's your home base? Didn't really have one.
Mm.
And I felt like a massive failure in that process. Like, oh man. Because right before I left the military, I got married for the second time and didn't work out. Like right, a couple months before I got out, it's like, oh, don't want to do this. I'm like, put all this effort into something and then it's like didn't happen. So then I felt like another failure again. So I feel like I failed that relationship big time. So this is something I'm thinking about working on, like the freedom of relationship to really like build something that I can call my home base. And then I can have the kind of community, surround myself with the right kind of people. And that's something I feel like I failed at big time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to know what positive lesson you learned from your
Yeah.
experiences.
There was a lot of rationalization that happened.
Yes.
There was there was a lot of rationalization that happened. I was thinking, okay, what was my purpose in that process? Because sometimes I tell myself, like, sometimes you meet people and you connect with them and you're there to maybe just not to get something, but to give something. And I felt like in that moment I was there to give this person something that they needed that they couldn't find except through me. And the universe just put me there for that reason. And I say, oh, well, you know what? Maybe if that was my purpose, my use for that purpose, I'm okay with it. That's the rationalization process. But I learned about sometimes people come in your life just to kind of motivate you for something else. Because after that, I got my ambition even rising higher, and I got even more motivation, even more focused. I'm like, okay, maybe that was something that I needed to really like step back into my purpose a bit more.
Mm.
And I had like, okay, it wasn't a loss, it was a gain. But at the moment, I couldn't connect those dots until I started sit back, reflecting on myself. I'm like, okay, all right, what was this trying to teach me? What was this telling me? What was this pointing me towards? And it was towards my purpose, I think. So that's my rationalization. Rationalization, yeah. Hmm.
Right. It's interesting how we connect the dots afterwards.
I wish we could connect in the moment.
Yes, I
Mm-mm.
wish we could have foresight instead of hindsight.
Mm. Mm. To
Right?
see what's
Hindsight
in plain sight.
2020. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of that, I think one way we can have more of that foresight rather than saying, oh, like 20 years later, in hindsight, I could now see, and and then you lose 20 years. I think one way is to start questioning things,
Mm.
to have that foresight. Just, whatever you tell yourself, if it doesn't feel amazing,
Mm-hmm.
question it. Is
Mm.
this true? What else might be true? Or I'm curious, what's another possibility? What's another option? And I think that's one way we could start maybe seeing a different future that's possible.
Mm. I'm gonna ask you this question too, if you ever been in love. Like, cause I remember I've been to a couple of relationships, plenty of them, so to speak. But I think I've only been in love twice. One was once in Hawaii and once in Germany. I won't say no names, right? But I remember the reason why I think I fell in love in those moments because when I was being really honest, I think that was the two relationships I was actually honest. I mean, I broke a lot of hearts broke in my present, right? But those were the two I was really honest, and I think I fell when I was the most honest.
Mm,
And that's kind of when I was looking back at my reflecting, like, oh my God, Asher, relationship is something that eludes you, but you've been in two situations where your heart was in it a lot. And I remember those. So have you been in love?
those two. The one that comes, so interestingly, I had always said to myself, I don't know if I've ever been in love. I don't know what
Mm,
that feels like. And you hear other people talking about it. And then I know people who are in love with everybody that they date. It's just,
hmm.
they just fall in love very easily. But I was, as you were talking, I was thinking there may have been one time, one guy that I dated. And what made me think that I might have had this in love feeling
Hmm.
is I was living at home at the time and he would sleep over. And what we would do was we would set the clock 2 hours before we had to get up
Hmm.
because we wanted to be able to say goodbye for 2 hours. So, he'd have to get up at
You was
6.
in love.
He would have to get up at 6 to leave my house to drive 45 minutes to get to work. So
Hmm.
we would set the clock for 4 a.m. and then we would start saying goodbye. And I think that means I was in love because I am not a morning
Mm.
person. I'm a person that
Mm.
hits snooze and I sleep as long as I can before I have
Mm.
to get up. So, what do you think? Does that mean I was in love?
It's so much effort put into the departure piece of it could mean that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. I guess being in love for everybody is different. Being in love
Yeah,
for everybody is
I mean,
different.
I mean, it's funny, right? I make light of it, but I will say that he was the only guy that I dated that I felt he loved me. I would
Ah.
catch him just looking at me, just like with like adoration, and I
Mm.
felt loved by
Mm.
him. So,
That's the important part.
yeah,
You can
that
tell that person loved you.
yeah.
Huh.
So I told the funny side and then I told the serious side, but I would say that was the only relationship
Huh.
where there was real love. And I will say, and then letting him go because I did love him. 3 years later, we were having issues, and I knew that we weren't right
Mm.
together. And because I loved him so much, I wanted him to be able to be happy and be
Mm-hmm.
who he was, and that wasn't going to be with me.
Mm.
So I let him go.
Mm. Relationship is it's not easy. I just get off today. I was talking to my therapist. I'm doing my work on myself right now. But we
Yeah.
was talking about the same idea around relationship piece, and I was like, man, because my fourth freedom I'm seeking, pursuing is freedom of time, freedom of purpose, freedom of money, and freedom of relationship. And I feel like I'm in my purpose now. I finally feel like I've unlocked it. Where I'm like, okay, I'm passionate about this thing. I can build, I can create, I can get up every day and do this thing. If I'm not getting paid for it, I can still do it. I feel like I'm on purpose. Then I was able to buy myself some time after I retired from the military. I feel like I have a little bit of time. But then, but I think purpose give you time. Once you have time, then you can get the freedom of money and relationships, so forth and so on. But relationship is one of the big one. It's on it. It's like the fourth thing, but I really want to like figure out how to work myself into it. So we're starting the conversation. So I'm like, man, like I struggle. I feel like this is one of my biggest area of failure in my entire life is relationship. Not keeping up with the right kind of friends. Like I have a lot of friends, but didn't really keep up with them. Mostly it's like surface relationships. Not no really deep one. I have a few deep one, but I think I could have created more because I've been around a lot of people and they really loved me and liked me, but I never kept up with them. I just keep moving, keep chasing that horizon, just keep moving forward. I was like, I need to go and sit back and start building new friends, get more deeper with relationships, and understanding people a bit more because I have the ability to do it. People always tell me like, Ashley, you're really good at people. You should spend more time just doing that. But I'm just always like the new thing, the new thing. And then now I'm like, all right, I'm at a stage. I need to figure out how to study the old and master it so I can understand it a bit more. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Same. I would say, relationships have not been a strong point for me. Yeah. I mean, even friendships,
Mm.
the friendships I have, I will say are because they initiate. They initiate getting together and the phone calls and that.
Mm.
So that's something that, and I'm more mindful of it now. So I do make an effort. Um, But yeah, I find that I kind of stand back and I let people come to me if
Mm-hmm.
they want. And that goes back to grade school. That
Mm.
goes back to standing back and waiting to be chosen to be on the team, and then nobody chooses you. And then the teacher finally saying, well, she's got to be on some team. I'm going to assign her to a team if nobody picks her. I
Mm.
really think it goes back to that. So it was just this conditioning that, yeah, if people want me, they'll come to me. And if they don't, so I'm, well aware of that. So I make more of an effort, but it's got to be something that I think about to do because it hasn't been natural
Mm.
for 40 years. Hasn't been, does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm curious. I'm listening to you. What do you do when like an awkward conversation? You're having a conversation with somebody and it just get kind of awkward. What do you normally do to kind of like make it work?
If a conversation gets awkward,
Gets awkward, yeah. Like what do you know? Have you been in a couple of awkward conversations? Like I don't know
oh,
what.
I'm sure I have. Yeah, I guess it depends on the context.
Yeah.
If it's
Mm.
work or personal
Like it
friends.
like because you're saying you wait for somebody to approach you because I'm the kind of person I'm always approaching people. Like I'm the infiltrator.
Yeah.
Like when I used to go with my friends, like Asher, we need to get into that group of girls over there, and I go over there and I get to start a conversation up. But some people are just like you were saying, you wait for the approach that happens for you. I'm not gonna go after the approach. But I'm curious to know, like, being a person that wait for the approach, what you do in an awkward conversation you're having with somebody like I don't know what to say next, and it's like this off. What do you normally do? Like, what's your strategy if you have any?
My strategy, I'll just ask a question. I'll
Mm.
ask them a question about themselves, or I might make a joke. I think humor is a
Mm.
is good use, just to like levity, like being light about things.
Mhm.
Um, but like I said, I've gotten a lot better about, especially since being in business, doing lots of
Mhm.
networking and getting to know people. I've become a lot better at starting conversations and initiating.
Ah.
Yeah. So
How long you been doing the networking stuff? Let me ask you about that one.
I started networking 2019
2019?
when I left my job. Yeah.
Mm. I
Yeah.
gotta tell you right now, it's been a life-changing thing for me doing the networking stuff as well.
How long
Because
have
when
you
I
been
left
doing it?
about a year now, because when I left the military, I lost my community, so to speak. Like
Mm.
I was in a community that I felt power empowered in. And when I left the military, I'm like, where's my community now? Like I need a new community. I didn't have one. So networking has been helped me with my crisis of identity, so to speak. I'm gonna go into this piece because I think a lot of people probably don't understand this part of it. So when you join the military, right? You're leaving a community like your family community or community where you're at. You go into the military, new identity, right? And you don't feel like you fit in, but then you get conditioned into it. But that community help you like just kind of build into it, like grow into it. You know what I'm saying? Assimilate into it.
Yeah.
But then you pick up the new identity. But then once you finish that identity, you're like, okay, now I'm finished. Can I get out? Back to an old community. No, it's not a switching identity. But now when you leave, there's no community like when you went in to help you transition back out of it. And I felt in that gap. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a community to help me get out of this crisis of identity. And that's when I felt depressed. I felt a lot of anxiety. I'm like, oh, this is what people go through when they switch identity. The crisis of identity is real. This is what it is, you know? And we often happens, like even when you go from your 30s to your 40s to your 50s, right? The same thing, you're switching identities and it becomes a little bit depressing. So I'm like, oh man, I need to start building community now because I realize how important community is. So I'm like, okay, networking. That's the part. That's how I meet a lot of people. Good community. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm missing. I need this. So now I'm curious to know how your experience was like when you start doing that.
That was good for you for putting yourself in the driver's seat, and you're
Mm.
realizing that I lost my community, and then you went out and you gained a new one.
Yes, yes. And
That,
this is how I
that,
met you, by the way. So
that's
anybody's
how we
wondering,
met.
that's
Yes,
how
at
we
a
met.
networking group.
The networking group. And I was like, oh, interesting. Nick, we gotta chat. Let's
Yeah,
go.
I've come to love it.
Mm,
It's so nice to you meet so many people, and because I've been networking in 2019, now 5 years, I
mm-hmm.
feel like it's a small world because people that I met years ago are showing up in other networking groups, and it's like, I remember you. Where did we
Yeah.
meet? And it's like,
Yes.
and people from everywhere across the country, other countries. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, it's I love it. I mean, it's been a lifesaver for me, really. Because I'm a big person of community. I like being around people. When I'm around people, my energy like just thrive. And then I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
I'm stuck. But the universe was knowing what it was doing. It kept me locked away for a little bit because I had to build some foundation for myself. But now I feel like I'm getting there now. So
It
yeah,
really opens up your world,
yes.
networking. I
And
just,
and and, and I believe in the what do you call it, the six degree of separation. You heard that concept? You seen the movie?
I have
You
not
might.
seen the movie, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's an old movie. I think Will Smith was in that movie a long time ago. And he's talking about like, you know, the right person is somebody that knows the right person for you. Even the president of the United States. You know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows that person that can get you connected. It's just a matter of the right person. And sometimes you just gotta keep acting, talking to people like, oh, this is the right person. We can team up now. And we can do a
Mhm.
lot. So I'm always thinking about that. Like, who's that person I need to take over the world with? I don't know who they are, but maybe Nikki knows that person that we just have a conversation. Asher, you should meet this person here. And then,
Yeah,
oh, we start talking like, oh my God, dude, I've been looking for you. Or girl, I've been looking for you, right? And now we can do a lot together. So
yeah.
I love it. I'm enjoying
You
it.
never know who you're going to meet. I
Hmm.
joined, how many? I think around the time that I left my job, it was around
Hmm.
2019 that I joined this Barter Saves. It's called Barter.
Barter save.
Yes, and it's
Mm.
for business owners. And
Hmm.
when you join and you become a barter member, you can barter with each other's businesses. So there's
Ah.
everything from bakeries, hair salons, um, marketing companies, chiropractors. I mean, over 300 businesses. So
Hmm.
I joined and I'm like, okay, sure, maybe I can get some printing services on barter. I'll coach people on barter.
Hmm.
That was the intent. And I reached out to this gym owner of a
Hmm.
Max Challenge gym. And she's like, oh, yeah, let's do lunch. And I'm like, okay. And then we did. And, we just kind of like hit it off. And I stayed in touch with her. 2020 came and we lost a little bit of touch when the world shut down. But then
Hmm.
we got back in touch. And the windup is, uh, 3 or 4 years later, I ended up partnering with her and I do mental fitness classes at her
Mm.
gym.
Wow.
And that came out of, just an outreach, a lunch, and then staying in touch. I never thought that I would be doing that, but it was just an idea. And then it became a really nice collaboration.
I like the concept of bartering, just trading. Because that process, you can't tax that process, right?
You can't what?
Can't tax it. There's no taxes, right?
They do.
So
Oh no, it's taxed.
it's tax.
I get a 1099 form. So anybody who
Mm.
I coach that pays me with barter credits, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
gotta pay tax on. I don't know
Ah,
why. It doesn't make sense
interest.
to me. It's
Yeah,
very interesting.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, because I
I'm gonna tell
could
you.
only use that money or that barter credit on another service. I can't use
Ah,
it to pay the mortgage.
no, exactly. So, interest. The tax man is everywhere. Oh my God.
I know.
This guy thought about everything, huh? You, you- you know, I'll tell you a story about my dad, kind of similar to the bartering. I call it they call it a day for a day, but I call it exchange labor. So how we do it, because my dad was a farmer, and he was telling me a story, and I used to see it when I was young growing up. So he used to like say seven farmers, right? And what they would do is on Monday, all of seven farmers go to my dad's farm, and they help him work. So everybody work together on that one day. Tuesday, everybody go to this other farmer's farm, and Wednesday goes to the other farmer's farm. So they do that thing all week. And so sometimes like the springtime, you want to make sure that you plan all your stuff so you can kind of like rise during the springtime. You got to till the soil, so forth and so on. So y'all work together. I was like, oh my God, such an awesome teamwork because now everybody come together, work very hard, knock out the work. And if I'm working with you, working five of us, like we get a lot done, and we compete to get the work done too, right? And I was noticing how that teamwork works. I'm like, man, this is something that we need to continue to like organize together and do because it was very effective. They get a lot of work done. If it was by himself, it would get it done. It would take him longer, but together, they was able to accomplish a lot. So that bar, thing kind of remind me of that process as well.
Yes, there's a
Mm,
lot to be said for working together as a team. I mean, you're just so much
mm,
coming from a more empowered place when you've got other people
teamwork.
and you build upon other people's strengths and utilize them. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, I used to go sit here sometimes, and they used to cook some good food too. Oh my God, these guys used to cook some good food. We call it in Jamaica, we call it run a boat. They used to cook, so I used to cook some really good food, man. I used to go there, like whoever hosts the people on that day for that farm, they would cook. And it was good food. Like I used to love it. To get off school or on the weekend, I used to go there.
Fresh food
Awesome.
from the farm.
Fresh food, yeah, fresh food, everything. Like, oh my God. Anyway, that was awesome. You took me on memory lane just now. With the
Yeah,
bartering, yes, yes.
fresh is the best.
Fresh is the best.
Yes.
Any other major point in your life, you're like, that thing, I failed at it. But here's the thing. If I didn't fail at it, I would pick up that key for this new door I'm opening. Have you had an experience in the past where if it wasn't for that failure or that experience, when you get to this location, you would have the key for that new experience, that new door?
Other than the
Mm-hmm.
failure of acting
Failure of
and
acting
settling into teaching,
and the
then
relationship
and
piece.
then staying single for most of my life and not having a family.
Are you still single now?
Yes.
Okay. Keep looking, my friend. It's out there.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because it's not funny. It actually became annoying, but I just let it be what it is. But
Mm-hmm.
so many people say, when you least expect it. Have
Uh-huh.
you heard that? It'll happen or you'll find him when you least expect it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I can't say that I did expect it. I mean, especially after resigning from my job, I made priority
Mm-hmm.
business. I said dating
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice to have, but not a need to have. So it wasn't like I was expecting it, yet I would still keep hearing this advice. So recently, I just decided to completely let it go and
Huh.
just be like, you know what? When it happens, but there's no focus, there's no effort,
Yeah.
and if I got to tell you, Asher, it felt really good to just stop it. And
Mm.
one of the things, this is going to sound terrible, but I'm going to share it anyway. One of the things that made me make that decision of just letting go completely, January 2024 was 20 years that I was trying the online dating. 20 years.
Years.
Yes.
Mm.
And I thought to myself about the definition of insanity,
Mm.
doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So I decided, done with the online dating, 20 years is enough. Now, there were some relationships within, sprinkled in,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
20 years. But for the majority of that time, it was looking and searching, lots of swiping left.
Mm.
And so that's when I decided just let it go. It's not even a focus. There's no effort at all. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what happens. But it felt like take it like I took off the crap sack on my back, like lighten the load. Just be like, I'm free.
That's liberating. That's liberating. And
Yeah.
I will share something similar as well for me. Because I shared this on another podcast I was on. But this last year, yeah, last year I had got someone pregnant. I was like, oh my God. So it didn't work. My daughter is about to be 18. I was like, I'm done with the kids thing, right? I'm like, I'm just focused on like my journey, my purpose. And then it didn't work out the way it's supposed to work out. We kind of like didn't work out. But I made a promise to myself. I was like, Asher, you almost just disrupted all your plans. So I said, I am not gonna have sex again until my business make $1 million. That's what I told myself. And I'm like, listen, so it's like no more distraction, Asher. No more distraction. You will not do anything like this again until your business get to where you want it to get to. And even though that was a very hard commitment, I'm like, you know what, I can do it because when I set my mind to something, I'm locked in, right? So I'm like,
Hmm.
you know, I can do this. So now I'm like, okay, so once I did it, like a lot left off my shoulder now. Because now I don't send mixed signals like I used to, or I don't put myself in situation. I'm like, okay, no, I'm focused on this thing.
That's
And
right.
that was very helpful. So when you say like, okay, you just like stop that thing, it's very liberating. Very
Very
liberating.
liberating. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
felt this relief, and it wasn't even my idea. It was actually the gym owner. We were on the phone and we were just talking, and she goes, "What if you just stopped it? Like, delete all the apps?" And I'm like, interesting. I kind
Mm-hmm.
of like that idea. And
Mm-hmm.
this was maybe 3 weeks ago. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's recent and it's nice. And it saves me time because now instead
Yes.
of scrolling for an hour at night before going to bed,
Mm-hmm.
they're not on the phone to scroll through. So I'm like,
No. Oh
yes.
my God. I feel the empowerment already. Yes.
Did you
Like,
say that was a year ago that you got somebody
no,
pregnant, or was that your 18-year-old 18 years ago?
no. It's last year. It's in 2024. We in
Last year.
March. Yeah, it's
Okay.
last year. Last year. It happens
Last year.
last year. And I was
Okay.
like, that's it for me. Like I need to focus on the thing that I'm here to build. And that
Okay.
was very liberating for me because like let me stop worrying about, just focus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so you speaking of that, that reminds me of another lesson I learned in
Okay, let's go.
in the failures that I've had, um, is to pay attention to how you feel.
Mm,
Because for me, when I made the decision to quit on the acting dream and come back home, it didn't feel good in my body.
mm,
I knew it wasn't right, but I ignored that feeling and I just went through the motions. Fast forward to making the decision to resign from my job, it was scary because I was
mm-hmm,
walking away from a paycheck
mm-hmm,
and benefits and a pension to uncertainty, right, with a business. But I had this sense of calm in my gut. Like I
mm.
just felt this feeling of calm. And I listened to that and I said, that means I will be okay. And this
Wow.
is the right decision. Yeah.
Wow.
So I now make decisions based on how I feel. If something feel like you said when you made that decision to just not sleep with anybody until you have $1 million business and you felt this like feeling
Mm-hmm,
of relief. And same thing with me of just letting it go.
mm-hmm,
And just, you know what? Just focus on doing life every day and being happy
mm.
and let
It,
life just happen.
it's interesting. They said 95% of the decision we make is how we feel in that moment. And that is very true. Like I felt it, I'm doing it. I'm
Yeah.
going back to how I feel. I love this quote. It says, the longest journey a man has to travel is 14 inches. from his head to his heart.
Oh,
And
I love that.
yeah, and I believe that is so true because I live up here. I dominate in my head. Like I exist in my head a lot. And I realize every time I try to get to the heart space, it's like that cartwheel or whatever. You retreat back into your head because then that space is too vulnerable for me. And coming from the army, the military is a very doing organization. We just keep doing, 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 not a lot of reflecting. So then the heart space is never a place I occupy much. So now me leaving that environment, come back to myself, like, oh my God, I'm doing a lot of reflecting now, going back to my history. Like they said, the person who study their history or master of the future. I'm like, this is so true. Like I'm like the more I look back, the more I see like, oh my God, I'm missing so much. Because if I was reflecting, I was able to connect it that a lot more better, but I wasn't. I would just keep doing adding, adding, adding things. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, I need to get back in the heart space. But then it gets very scary trying to travel there because that's where you require that community. Like, hey, I need to be in a vulnerable state. I need people to protect me while I'm in a vulnerable state because I know my mentally I can protect myself in my head. But then when I get to the heart piece, I feel vulnerable to whatever it is, right? The elements, and I'm like, oh, I'm not ready for it. So then you retreat back. How do you feel about that process for you?
I was just thinking when you were talking about that, when you talked about your home base that
Mm-hmm.
you lost earlier in life, that the heart is the home base,
Ah,
that it comes back to us.
yeah. It's interesting that quote that says, "Home is where the heart is." But
Yes.
where is the heart? It's in you. So then you are the home. Oh my God. Mm.
Home is where the heart is. Heart
Mm.
is your home base,
And your heart is in you.
and
So
your heart is in you.
you are your home
Yeah.
base.
And you are your home base.
Where are
That's
we going
that's
to
what I
work?
was thinking about while you were
Mm.
talking. That
Mm.
you found your home base, the 14 inches between your brain and your heart.
Listen, listen. It's I'll be honest. Every time I try to go there, sometime I get there and I'm there, I'm cold, and I retreat back into my safety zone, my comfort zone, which is in my head. And I realize it's a space that like you need support to occupy. I will put it this way: you need support to occupy your heart. Just like when it comes to the masculine, feminine energy, like the masculine protects the feminine, like the man protects the woman, like the woman is a build, the women are great community builders. I'm noticing that by networking. I realize that women are community builders. Men
Mhm,
protect the community, women build it. So I'm like, I need to find a lot of women to like, get around because they know how to build communities because it takes the heart to keep people connected. And sometimes men can't do it like women do because we're just good at protecting things,
mhm.
not building, not newly connecting the network. So you have skills in that. I noticed that as well, right? Yeah, you got skills in
Yes.
that.
And when you mentioned about like leaving the heart and going back to the head and that
Mm-hmm.
it's comfortable, it made me think of I heard somebody say that they're really not comfort zones, they're familiar zones.
100%.
We're,
Mm-hmm.
what is the brain is wired for familiar. So we'll call it a comfort zone because we've acclimated to it and we've gotten used to it, but it's really not comfortable. Like, staying in a job that it just sucks the life out of you for
Ah,
15 years wasn't comfortable. It was safe and
familiar.
familiar.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
So,
You're definitely a mind expert. I see the mental exercise happening right now. So okay, so now since you work on people mental framework, how often does that lead into the heart space, the the feeling space? Because you say you normally make decisions based on how you feel it too. So how does that normally navigate for you and the folks that you help out?
yeah, it ends up leading into the feeling space a lot.
Mm,
Processing emotions is what I do as well. So you're dealing with the mind, with the thoughts, and then also the emotions because they get stored in our body. And
mm-hmm,
so like one of the I use a tool with people that helps them to rid the emotions from the body.
mm-hmm,
So they don't stay like, anger, for example, or guilt or resentment. It can just become so ingrained in you that that's something else that we get familiar and comfortable with.
mm-hmm,
So then when you start to feel a bit of joy, it's like, whoa, what's that? That's not safe. I'm going to retreat back to my anger and my
mm,
resentment because it's what I know. So I work a lot with helping people to release those emotions from the body so that doesn't have to take up space anymore.
Mm. I love that. Retreat. Even though you think about a retreat, like I'm organizing a retreat. What does that mean? I mean, I'm putting together a place you can retreat from your job and come to.
Mhm.
Like, I was thinking about the word retreat. Like, retreat, yeah, when you retreat, what do you mean? I'm retreating from what I'm doing to go to a place to not do what I'm used to doing. So the retreat is
Right.
here. Yeah, it's
Right. In
interesting.
that sense, you're retreating, you're going someplace else for
Yes,
relief.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Retreat
Hmm.
from or
Retreat
retreat
from,
to.
right. Versus retreating, like,
Yeah.
moving back away from something. Like you go to the
Mm,
heart space and it's like, whoa, this is not familiar. I'm going to retreat back to here,
mm,
which
mm-hmm,
I've told myself is comfortable because
mm.
it's known.
Wow.
I could only speak for myself, but a lot of the negative thoughts that have played up here are not comfortable. Just,
Mm,
it was like back when I was 16 and getting into Oprah and the Gary Zukov and the Iyanla Van Zant, it's like I wanted to be out of my mind and skin because it was so uncomfortable in there.
mm. Wow. Nikki, you have made my day, by the way. Definitely conversation I love to have. I love to have very intellectual conversation.
Yes,
I'm
me
a
too.
I'm a I starve for them all day, and that's why I live in books. People are like Asher, you just like
Mhm.
I live in books because it's a place I can find like so much different ideas, and it's not like you're a person that loves books as well. So thank you so much for coming on here today and chat with me.
Thank you for having me. I love having conversations like this. And
Mm,
there's not a lot of people in our life that
mhm.
would have the bandwidth or the
Yes.
capacity to listen to this conversation. But it's
Mhm.
nice to know that there are people that you can go deep and talk about meaningful things that help you to shift, grow, and transform.
Hmm. So I'm gonna close with this then. So if I go back to when we started, like the people, this my big question for me when I was in the military was who do I want to be a hero to? And at that point, that was the American family, the American population. Want to be a hero to when I was a soldier. When I left it, same question. What I want to be a hero to was the immigrants and veterans. So now I'm asking the same question now. Like right now in your life, just kind of simplify. Like who are the people that you want to be a hero to that you get up every day and just want to be a hero for them? Who are those
I
people?
get chills when you ask that question and when you
Mm,
shared who you want to be a hero to.
mm-hmm,
And who I want to be a hero to is those people who have dimmed their light and who have
mm,
sat on the sidelines.
mm,
And I want to encourage them and, kind of hold their hand to step up and shine
mm.
completely. Stand in your glory.
Why does that sound like you so much based on your
It sounds
story?
like me, right? Because I sat on the sidelines, I dimmed my light. Yes, I silenced my voice.
You know what the funny thing is? Like we're always speaking from our niche.
Mhm.
Like we're always speaking to our niche. It's just it's interesting. I was thinking about it, like the identity that we have or we used to have, like those are the same identity we're trying to protect. We're trying to go against that anti-hero for. Right? Because sometimes we can see ourselves like the hero and the anti-hero and the victim in the middle. We can see ourselves when we was a victim in certain situation, like, okay, I'm gonna stand up for that person I used to be that didn't know, wasn't aware of certain things. And it's interesting you go back, like, yeah, you and in that space, you can never be a fraud. Why?
That's
Because you've lived it.
because you've lived it.
You've lived it. Yeah. And that means you figured it out. So there's no, oh, does it work? Yes, it do. Look at me. So I appreciate you sharing that, by the way. And if people gotta hit you up other than on Facebook on these platforms that we are have a conversation on, where can they find you like offline?
My website,
Hmm.
unless that's considered online. Uh,
It is. It is. Yeah.
considered online. Yeah, other than my website, which is my name, nikkigangemi.com, there would be Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Same thing. Okay.
Yeah, email and phone number. Those would be the offline ways.
Yeah, we're not gonna share those because you don't want those scammers, man. They be out there. They be calling my phone. I'm like, oh my God, these people, where they get my phone number, man? God damn.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure, Nikki, chatting with you. You're okay. You know what? Before we go, any takeaway from this conversation that you want to share? Just wrap up. Any couple takeaways that like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I really love your vibe of just very casual and relaxed and
Hmm.
asking questions. You really were a model for me. We were talking about networking, and
Hmm.
I think that you're a master at networking because you showed that
Mm.
today during this
Mm.
conversation. So
Thank you.
it's
That's a very
my
high compliment. I'm taking that
yes.
one. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I have to say then, my wrap up is it's interesting when you meet people and you get to know their story. And I love the idea that you cannot hate someone once you know their story, once you understand their story. It's hard because like,
Yeah.
oh, that story sounds like mine. Or if I was in your situation, I would probably do some of the same thing. So I really learn about a lot about you today about how your courage of doing things that you felt that was right for you in your stomach. And I was like, I need to start following my intuition now a lot. Like the hindsight, inside, foresight, plain sight, all those sides, I gotta make sure I activate all those for myself and kind of really go after them. So I appreciate your time.
Yes. Thank you, Asher. I appreciate you. This was an enlightening conversation.
It was. And if you were listening right now, either live, go ahead and put hashtag live in the chat, or if you're watching a replay, hashtag replay, and leave a comment. Let us know how you feel about this conversation. And with that, make it an awesome day.
Bye.